us on Facebook at Dante A. Long. Follow us on Instagram at Dante Long. Follow us on YouTube at Dante A. Long. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.
Good evening, and welcome to Long Talk on this Tuesday evening. I'm so happy to have you with me tonight for this wonderful conversation, and I'm so thankful that each week we come together for a long talk to discuss the relevant issues of today and the trending topics in our community and in our culture. For those that are watching tonight for the very first time, I am your host, Dante Long, the host of Long Talk, and I am so privileged that you, ma'am, and you, sir, have taken this Tuesday night, taken time out of your busy schedule to log on and be a part of this conversation on this evening. So again, thank you so much. And for all of those that are watching tonight on the various platforms, do me a favor. I need you to go to the various social media platforms. Yes, that's right. Go to, whether it's Facebook, I need you to like and to share. If it is on Instagram, please go ahead and hit that love button, that like button, and follow us on Instagram. If it's on Twitter, please go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Dante Long. And those that are watching tonight on YouTube, thank you so much. Please do me a favor, as I always say, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and you also hit that notification bell so that you can be made aware in real time what's transpiring here on Long Talk. So thank you so very much, and we appreciate you for taking the time to stay connected and to join the Long Talk family, as many of you have and continue to do. I'm always excited, as I've said in times past, when I run into many of you all over the city, and as I travel, many of you walk up to me and say, hey, listen, I watched the broadcast and I enjoy it. And I want to say to each of you, it brings me great joy each time that I have the opportunity to share with you and to share a Long Talk experience, because I believe in our culture, real meaningful dialogue is what we yearn for as we continue to journey through life and reach our several destinations and our destinies. Then I believe it is necessary that we have the needed conversations where we hear what is absolutely essential for our progression and success. So again, thank you so much, and thank you again for all that are tuning in and are watching tonight. Well, tonight we have a hot topic, and we have a very special guest, as we are continuing in these series. For those that have been watching for the last few weeks, we've been really talking about all of the injustices and all of the various things that have been transpiring in our world and in our particular community, not only in the city of Atlanta, but also particularly in Clayton County, where we tape this broadcast from. There have been many uprisings, and there's been an incident that gained national attention a little over 8 days ago. And so again, this week we're taking the time to talk about just what really is transpiring in our community. And so tonight, I am so privileged to have a very good friend of mine who is a fellow clergyman in the Clayton County area, particularly in the city of Riverdale, Georgia. And tonight, he's here to talk with us and to share what's on his heart. So tonight, Long Talk family, would you help me welcome my good friend, Pastor George Worrell. Pastor George Worrell, how are you this evening, sir?
Brother, I'm blessed, man. Certainly thankful unto you and the Long Talk family for having me. Let's do it. I'm excited about it.
Wow, wow. We're so happy to have you on and for you to take the time to share with us and be a part of this meaningful dialogue. And please just take a few minutes and just share with everybody exactly who you are and what's going on in your world these days.
All right, cool. Absolutely. So, George Worrell, I'm a pastor. My wife, we planted our ministry. The name of our ministry is Kingdom Life Changer. And our mantra is the church for the streets. And what that means is that we go after the disenfranchised, marginalized persons that don't feel accepted by Orthodox church and make them feel welcome. Anybody, we have a saying, no judgment zone, that it's a hospital for the sick, and so we are we are blessed to have a congregation of millennials primarily, uh, but not just millennials. But I have a very young church that has been God kind and great to us. And so a little bit about me as far as our church. About me personally, rather, I am south side of Atlanta, College Park, Georgia, to be exact. Born and raised, and so grew up right in the mid. A lot of the things that we see that our people are frustrated about, that they're protesting against. That's a little bit about myself. Yeah, from the south side, and love it.
Oh man, so you have grown up here on the south side and now you are pastoring here on the south side. And so you know this community pretty much better than anybody because you've been here all your life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, man, I am so glad that you know the streets and you feel as though you've been called to the streets because we have so many individuals who are transplants and who are still trying to learn the community. And we're so thankful for all that have migrated from across the country. And many of our friends have moved here from the north and from the west coast and from other parts of the east coast. But it's very rare that you meet somebody who's been born and raised right here in the city, and particularly right here on the south side.
Oh yeah,
And so you're saying that not only were you born and raised, went to school and did all of that, but now your mission is the South Side, right?
absolutely. When the Lord committed myself and my wife in a ministry, He led us to the south side. Um, he just That's just where He's led us so far, and I'm excited about the future where we might go and where we will go. But yeah, we definitely want to get in the trenches where the people are, and we've been received quite well. You know, we might have the challenges, but we've been tremendously blessed by amazing leadership team. I have an amazing my wife first and foremost, First Lady Raven, my team, and then the young people that come out are very hungry for God. These are people that they're not religious. They want God, and so it's been amazing. I mean, it's been absolutely.
Wow, wow. So when you talk about many that you pastor, or most of the people that you pastor, they're right here in the local community.
We have a good majority that's from the South Side, College Park, Georgia, Riverdale. Some that are from live in Atlanta, uh, but that's pretty much the main core of where our membership is.
Okay, I bring that up and I raise that up because a few of the things that I've been looking at lately here in our community has been just some of the tension that's been going on in and around our community as of late. It seems that our community has been on edge there's been national attention that has been brought to our county, in particularly Clayton County, as we saw again just last week. There were a couple of young men who were um, inside of a convenience store and brandished a weapon, which was a BB gun, but was um, judged as a real gun. And so uh, the police was called, and when the police were called, the police did subdue those young men and drew his weapon and searched them. And after he searched them, he then took them to their various places of safety. And
Hmm.
but this has really caused an uproar among so many people in our community, right? And have you heard any of the rumblings in your network of people?
Oh, absolutely. It's the same. What we're seeing is we're seeing people come together collectively uh, and showcase their disrespect with the system, with policies and things of the sort. They are just tired of. And one thing about this generation that we pastor, that we lead, is they're very, very determined to get. And so we have seen our network of people, my members, my members were right downtown protesting that have been on the south side protesting peacefully, and getting in there, getting in the struggle, getting in the trenches, fighting for the cause. Because I think at this time where we are as a nation of people of Black America, we got the attention of a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have attention, and we got to capitalize on it. One of the things I learned when we studied the civil rights movement is that Dr. King understood how to galvanize his forces and to not just be, notice they don't say the civil rights moment, but they say the civil rights movement,
Mm-hmm.
which gives it basically gives light to the fact that it can't just be temporary frustration. There has to be a fight towards getting policy reform, change in legislation, knowing the right. Something I'm gonna touch on is knowing the people that. One of the things we're gonna do at KLCC with the upcoming election, like as far as the runoffs, educating our people on who's on the ballot. Because one of the things we do is we tell people to go vote, but when they get to the polls, they don't know who they're voting for. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost, oh, it's as though they didn't vote at all because you could vote for the wrong person. So now the next step or phase when we're focusing on the KLCC is educating our people on what we can do beyond the protests to get policy change, legislation change, really taking inventory of the people, the House of Representatives, these people that are in position that can cause change to take place, because we got to get that in place. Absolutely. But yeah, we've been seeing the outrage all across. Absolutely. We've certainly seen it. Yes, sir.
So I heard you say that you all are taking the next step in trying to mobilize individuals to understand the voting process. What steps are you guys taking to help your congregants with understanding the voting process and those persons who are on the ballot?
Well, what we're planning to do with what we're getting with our strategy team now is to basically put up a list of who the representatives are in each municipality, city, where they live, primarily in Clayton County, because that's where we are planted at. That's where our church is headquartered out of. And so make sure that they're registered to vote, and just making sure that they can make their voice be heard at the polls. But again, as I alluded to, making sure that they know who we're voting for. Again, even myself, and I've been voting. My first time voting was during when President Barack Obama was
Mm,
his first election. That was my first time voting back in
okay.
2008, and but even know everybody. When I went and voted here recently, and I was telling the poll worker there, I didn't even know who the people were. He said, "It's not your fault." we got to make sure the people that are running. See, he said that they take for granted they're going to get certain votes, and
Yeah.
so he says that we got to put pressure on them to get in the community and tell us who you are, why should we vote for you, so on and so forth. And so that's pretty much our angle. We're still working out the specifics of it, but leading up into November and even beyond, getting our people to vote is that's our main focal point, and then getting everybody registered to vote in our church as well.
Wow. Let me ask you this. One study recently shown that the poverty rate in Clayton County is right at 22%, whereas the national average is only 13%. Has this been one of the reasons why you are placing such a focus on voting and voter awareness?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the disparities that we see, the empirical statistics that even you just alluded to, gives us all the proof and the evidence that we need to see why we need to fight in these communities, because these are the people that are in the trenches every day, and they're dealing with the racism, they're dealing with the inequalities, they're dealing with all that stuff. And I always wanted to help my people from the neighborhood where I come from. I didn't grow up in a rich neighborhood. You know, I grew up on welfare. We grew up on food stamps, right? We grew up
Mm-hmm.
in that type of neighborhood. You wear my clothes, I wear your clothes, cuz give it back. And so, as God has been so good to me, I don't want to forget that, and I want to help as many people from where I am from. And we know we've heard the scripture, you know, the Lord came unto his own received him not, and we understand that with that degree. But certainly, I believe that before you can build nations, you got to first start building neighborhoods. And we have a lot of people that are in a hurry to go and build abroad, but they neglect what's right in their face. I tell people all the time, Pastor Long, ministry is right in your face. If you want to do ministry, it's right in your face. And, you
Yeah.
know, but a lot of people don't want to do ministry. They want to be seen. If there's not a camera in their face, if there's not a mic in their hand, they won't serve. But that's not our mentality at KLCC.
Mm. Mm. Um, I think again, where we have seen these disparities, it seems that many in our community, meaning the clergy community, we seemingly have gone to either number one, try to preach a prosperity gospel to lift the mindset, or we have totally abandoned it and just told everybody that God's going to take care of you. It sounds like what you're saying is you're coming to help people help themselves. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that and giving them principles. Listen, one thing about the scripture, you hit it on the head, is that God gives us principles that we must activate, right? We can't just go to church, get a word, go home, and not make it applicable. One of the things we try to instill in our people, and we work on this during discipleship, is making sure you pragmatically utilize the principles, the nuggets, the notes that you get from the teachings of the Most High and of the Lord Jesus Christ and through the sermons, and then apply it to your everyday life. You know,
Mm.
I think that becomes of utmost importance, because if not, then what are we doing? We just gathering and
Yeah.
edified. The people's lives should be made better with the principles. And here's the thing about a principle does not care who tries to apply it. A principle works if you're good or evil. Principle works, you know, whether you light skin, dark skin. So the idea is to teach people, right?
Right.
Utilize the principles that you get, and you know, you got to, faith without works is dead. And that's one thing I tell all of my members. You know, don't be the type of person to blame God is your fault. No, what did you do? Because see, a lot of people like to blame God in knowing that they're lazy, right? No, this is a whole nother subject matter, but knowing that they don't put the work in, you know, they want so much out of God and they sit down being procrastinators. But we teach our people how to work in the wait. And the Bible says, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, mount up on wings as eagles, run and not grow weary, walking they shall not faint. But wait does not imply be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wait implies let me work while I wait, meaning let me apply to a job, let me try something different. And that's one of the things I take the joy out of pastoring, because you get to see the enhancement of people's life. And you get to see them come in as this disheveled person, as this a disengaged person that didn't believe in themselves, and 6 months into their membership at the ministry, you see them blossoming. That's the joy of ministry for me. And so, absolutely, we're focused on getting them to get in a position to help themselves, and making those principles applicable to their day-to-day life, and that they can see results.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
I am so happy to hear that you are taking a very active role. Listen, we got to pay a bill real quick, and we'll be right back in about 60 seconds, okay?
Absolutely.
Quality versus equity. Equality means every child gets a pair of shoes. Equity means every child gets a pair of shoes that fit. That means every school district has to meet every student's individual needs.
I'm Jerry O'Green with the Black Student Advocate. We advocate for black employees and black students within the K through 12 school districts. We hold school districts accountable to make sure that black students and employees are in a fair and equitable workplace.
Wow. So we understand that, man, we have somebody advocating now for our children, and we just heard yesterday that many of the children in our community, particularly Clayton County, are going back to school, and they're being given many different options as to how they can go back. One of the issues that we saw last year is that there was a complete stanch in learning from, and I'm not ashamed to say this, in the complete county setup, because there was a group. I don't want to put a percentage number on it, but there was a group of individuals that did not have necessary technology. They didn't have adequate Wi-Fi, didn't have adequate computers and things like that. What can we continue to do to improve these qualities in our community, Pastor?
Well, I believe you hit something. It's crazy you say that, because I was looking at, when you think about when the coronavirus pandemic came about,
Mm-hmm.
of course they about children to work at home, online teaching. Here's a problem with that. Most of our children's parents are undereducated or uneducated. What we have seen in Fulton County, the county in which I live, and then even with Clayton County, the county in which I pastor and work in, is that we have seen this system fail miserably. Also, due to the fact that you said it's just like in North Fulton County, you might have more and better resources, as opposed to South Fulton County, where there are not as great resources. Who who does that benefit, and who suffers from that? Our children are suffering in the house because the system, and I'm gonna get to this in a moment as well. We're depending on the system that has completely showed us that it has failed us. Now, here's the other side of that. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, co-founder of the NAACP, he said something that just blew my mind many years ago. He said that you cannot depend on how did he say it? I don't want to butcher it. He says you can't depend on basically the people that enslaved your ancestors. You can't turn around and expect them to educate the children of those ancestors that they enslaved. And we all know that slavery, the enslavement of slavery, still exists now, though we're not in chains. It has gone over into the educational institutions, even into religion. It's in all of those main systems of the world. So I think that to answer your question, we got to go back to the polls, hold these people accountable that are in these positions, and get them to put the fire under these people and say, hey, we need more funding for our children,
Yeah.
right? we don't want you to put up the statistics and say these kids are Title II schools and these schools are this, when you're not giving us the same resources that our counterparts in North Fulton County in more affluent neighborhoods are getting. And it becomes incumbent upon us to put that out there and use well, at least me as a pastor, I choose to use my platform to speak out against those things, to get our people. This is why you got to go vote. This is why you got to make sure who's the such and such over this committee, over that. Are you going to the PTA committees? Are you going to the parent teacher association? All these different things come in, and we have to leverage that. Here's another thing I want to say before I yield the floor back to you. We have to hold these political people very much so accountable. Now, what I mean by that is we must leverage. I'm about to get real confrontational with this right here, but it's okay. It's all out of love.
It's a long talk, man. It's a long talk. Go for it.
I love it. We got to leverage our political position better. Now, what I mean by that is when I look at the LGBTQ community, what you see with that community is, and let me first state, I know I speak on behalf of Pastor Long as well, have nothing against anybody that is homosexual. If you identify queer, bi, lesbian, I don't judge you. I love you, right? So I want to just put that out there as a disclaimer. But what you see with that movement is you've seen them politicize their movement. What you saw during the Obama administration and Obama years, and it's something that a lot of black people don't like to talk about, it's something that I don't necessarily like, but I understand the political side of it. They had a lot of laws passed for them during the Obama administration. You've seen same-sex marriage was legislated. You've seen these different things come into play for them. In fact, you almost seen more be done for the LGBT community than for the African-American cause in and of itself. That's another conversation for another time. Now, what the point that I want to get to is that the reason why that takes place is because they put things in place to tell certain people in politics, listen, we got such and such amount of voters. We are not going to vote for you unless you do X, Y, and Z. Now, we got to start learning and understanding this politically because this is how things get done. We as a people have to come together and let candidates know, even up to the presidential candidacy, we will not vote for you if you don't do this for black people. Listen, minorities, okay, that's another term that they float out there. We need to be very specific for black people, for Africans, for our people, because if not, we're going to have these temper tantrums, these type of situations that come up, but we'll never get real change. So it goes back to leveraging, getting people to understand, listen, we got 20 million black voters right here. You ain't going to get not now. It's long talk, so I can use a little but not now one of these votes. If you are not committed to our agenda, what you've seen with the LGBT community is that they put that forth, right? And you've seen a lot of things happen for them, and you're still seeing it now. So I think that we need to do the same thing to leverage some stuff, because people take for granted our votes. They take for granted our outrage. They take for granted our frustration, because they say, oh, they'll get over it. They'll march for a few weeks. They're going to go back to work, go back to whatever, go back to buying their weave, they liquor, they whatever. We got to change the narrative on that.
And one thing that they always take for granted as well is our economics, our money, and the inequalities that you have been raising since the break is really the crux of, I believe, where this conversation will take its root to be meaningful to somebody tonight who's watching and who's tuning in. And if you're joining us, just tuning in, tonight's special guest is Pastor George Worrell, Senior Pastor of the Kingdom Life Changing Center in Riverdale, Georgia, a Clayton County clergyman who serves in the North Corridor in the city of Riverdale, Georgia. Pastor Worrell, these racial inequalities and injustices, they're nothing new. When you talk about more resources being present in North Fulton County than in South Fulton, Friend, this was transpiring in the 80s
Mhm.
when I was a student in the Fulton County school system. We knew that more resources were being given to those schools, and if you were privileged, you could take advantage of a busing service that would bus you out of your community and
Yeah.
take you to that north corridor of the county. Unfortunately, many individuals would return back to the south side within a year, many within 2 years, because they realized that they were not in a comfortable area. And we think sometimes that inequalities are only because we are not given a chance. But as you said, you cannot expect those who have already oppressed you to give you ample advantages by creating new environments that you can prosper in or flourish in. And I want to ask you this, with all of this being bear in mind, how then can you and I, as civic leaders, what is our responsibility? What should we be teaching our people, and where should we be leading our people to when it is that they're perhaps in poverty and not having adequate housing and not necessarily allowing their children to go to the best performing schools? What role are we playing, or should we be playing, in these injustices and inequalities?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Pastor Long. Listen, we must do the very same thing we do against sin. Is what God told the prophet, cry aloud, spare not.
Mm.
Uh, with the problem, I can only speak for my congregation. One of the things I'm seeing in this generation is that they will be disengaged from your ministry if you are in leadership, if you don't speak out on certain things. Um, Now, it's not to say that you're doing it for the people, but you do it because it's right. You do it because you don't sit back and now, there are certain things as leaders. I'm sure you've been pastoring even longer than I know that some things I can't. Now, some things I need to be quiet about. God to
Mm-hmm.
tell me I know. Then there are others where God says your people are expecting to hear from their leader as it pertains to this situation. So I believe that we got to quit being quiet about racism. All right, the whitewashing of Christianity, because when you deal with preaching this gospel and deal with making it culturally acceptable to an African person, but yet you see in the Western Hemisphere such a whitewashing of not just Christianity but of all Black history. You know now you're dealing with intelligent people that sit in the pulpit that are being drawn to different things, and that if you don't give them substance historically, spiritually, um, you're going to lose them. So one of the things that we focus on is giving voice to the voiceless, um, bringing up these issues, and then putting plans in action on our level. Again, we are only 2 years old as a ministry, but you know we do what we can on our level, and that's what we do. We're trying to reach out also with dealing with other churches and connecting our mission with theirs, and unifying in that regard. So I believe it starts there. Preachers, and let me say this as it pertains to racism.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that becomes important is that we have to speak more out against it. Like, I grew up in an era where social injustices sometimes will be preached over in the pulpit. This generation is obviously showing us that if you do that, they will not only abandon your ministry, but they will not rock with you. They are more. A lot of people try to compare us with the Martin Luther King generation and all the good stuff, and I get every generation is different, but this generation is different to the point to where they want to see change, and if they don't see that change being spearheaded by who they're being told their leaders are, then they will make the decision to lead themselves, as you've seen in the streets of Atlanta, as you are seeing across this country, and as you have also been seeing across this entire world. These protests have been going on in Italy, in Russia, just all across. So it's time out for white supremacy. It's time out that it's time that we start speaking out against it, because it's also in the church. White supremacy has snuck into the church as well. And so we got to learn to figure out, how do we deal with that? How do we address that? And how do you deal with a person that comes to you and they wrestle with Christianity because they've been told through social media that it's the white man's religion?
Mm.
How do you deal with that? I've had members come to me and tell me that they've left churches because when they asked pastors those questions, they could not give them answers to it. So I told
Wow.
myself,
Wow.
I'm doing my best to answer the difficult questions. I don't have all the answers, but I tell my members, if you come to me with a question, Bim, give me some time, let pastor research it, because I have a responsibility to give an account for defense of the faith, according to First Peter. Apologetics, defending the faith. Like I know, long watching basketball, football, offense is great, but defense wins championships.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the same is true in the gospel. We are very good at offensively preaching the gospel. When I say offensively, going on offense, preaching the gospel, hooping, mission, right, evangelism, right, all those great things. But we need to work on our defending of our faith against heretics, against apostasies. Against all that stuff. And that's what my focal point is, helping to defend the faith against these illogical, things that are being spewed out. We got to defend the faith against it.
Wow. Wow. Listen, I want to ask you something that has been a burning question, but I got to take a break. So after this
Okay.
break, I got something really important I need to ask you. We'll be right back.
Follow us on Facebook at Dante A. Long. Follow us on Instagram at Dante Long. Follow us on YouTube at Dante A. Long. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.
Equality versus equity. Equality means every child gets a pair of shoes. Equity means every child gets a pair of shoes that fit. That means every school district has to meet every student's individual needs.
I'm Jerry O'Green with the Black Student Advocate. We advocate for black employees and black students within the K through 12 school districts. We hold school districts accountable to make sure that black students and employees are in a fair and equitable workplace.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, listen, we're back here at Long Talk tonight with our special guest. And as we've been talking about racial inequalities, I got something I want to ask you, Pastor Worrell. I know where you're located there again in Riverdale, Georgia. And I just want to simply ask you, have you had visitation from Caucasians at your church? Have you had a lot of Caucasians to come by and visit with you and join into the cause of what you've been doing there in Riverdale?
We have not had as many. We've had about, I can recall at least one time where we might have had a Caucasian brother come and visit our ministry. And he came and visited, and that was even before we was at our location where we're at now. This some time ago, probably around our first year. Guy just kind of came in, and I think that you bring up something very, unique. Even Dr. King said that the most segregated time of the week is Sunday morning, and that still rings true even today. Our Caucasian brothers and sisters typically go to Caucasian ministries, and our brothers and sisters of African descent go to churches of African descent. We are starting to see a greater rise of multicultural churches. And so, but again, I think that we got to address this elephant in the room of racism, because that kind of is where it kind of starts at. If we're going to want to, and I have every desire of reaching across. I don't want to just pastor people that look like me, but I do want my people saved. I want multicultural. I've been talking to a guy that's an Asian. Where I work at, I work in funeral services, and we service the Buddhist community. Real quickly, share this with you. And guy was there. A young man had died, and he shared with me that the young man that was a Buddhist, they were doing a Buddhist ceremony, and it's quite different from the American traditional way of having a funeral. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he shared with me that my brother was a Christian. That's what he said. But he said because his parents were Buddhists, they're doing the service this way. And I said, wow. And we just began to talk. And that he began to share with me, even in Clayton County, there is a great surge of Asian Americans that are subscribing to Christianity. And I said, are you serious? And so me and him began to talk, and I told him about the church, and he's actually planning to come visit our ministry. And so I'm praying and believing God that that will be the beginning of us reaching across those ethnic lines. And because the kingdom of God is not about color, the kingdom of God is about getting people in and them becoming citizens of the kingdom, no matter your nationality, your creed, your race, your sexuality. We come into the kingdom and then we start to conform to the ways of the Lord Jesus. Now that's interesting because this is another subject for another time. We don't get God to conform to us, but we conform to His ways. You got to tell people that because people try to come in and do their own thing. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. All right, that we are working in our ministry to kind of expand beyond just people that look like myself. Yeah.
Sure, sure. I know one of the challenges I've been having lately is that a lot of my pastor friends have been talking to me about their sensing that just as many Caucasians have joined the cause of protesting and the agenda for police brutality to be reformed, that they, and I believe along with I will go ahead and say, are sensing that many will join the cause where we believe, as I've coined the phrase at our local church, that the love of God wins, which means many have heard me talk about when it was that our church was the victim of racial bigotry, that many came from all ethnicities. And while I know that many will congregate around a need, a missional need, I'm still waiting, and I believe we're on the horizon of seeing many come together for worship and speaking truth to power and crying out against that which is wrong, right? Are you sensing that we're on the brink of that at this juncture?
Well, let me say this. That's a tough. That's action packed right there. I want to unpack that. I want to say I'm reminded of the scriptures when Jesus would talk about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and Jesus would say stuff like, "Brood of vipers, you white tombs, you draw close to me with your words, but your actions are far away from me."
Ooh.
But what I want to say to
Yeah.
my Caucasian evangelical brothers and is that I believe that if they are serious about the predicament of Africans that are in America, and you obviously can tell that there is. This is why we're saying Black Lives Matter. It's because Black lives seem to be those lives that are in danger, right? But I I want to propose that any white evangelical, if you really are about equality, justice, you can no longer be silent about our situation.
Mm.
If you continue to be silent, that shows us your complicity. It's time now that we start holding them accountable.
Mm.
That means our white brothers that we know that don't show any racism or they don't seem like they're racist, right? And I know a lot of them that are not racist. I know some white brothers that are not racist. But
Sure.
I believe it becomes important that if you are about our cause, of equality. Like you said, we've seen them come out and they protested with us. but we need to see action followed up behind that. Just like I tell my black brothers and sisters that's out there as well, can't just be protesting. We need to see action that follows behind that. So I believe that if we in the church hold them up to that standard as well, we can start seeing more change. You don't see many white evangelicals speaking out against racism. You don't. Now, does that mean it doesn't happen? That doesn't mean it's not happening. I'm just saying you don't see many. We've just seen this long talk, so we can keep it real. We just seen what happened with Brother Rod Parsley. We saw what happened, right? And I'm not here to speak on that or give my opinion on it, but what you're starting to see is that people are saying, hey, if you're going to rock with us, but if not, we canceling you, right? You got to hear what I'm saying? Because that's where it's at now. This is what I feel. I feel that this is how I know I'm not a racist. If I seen white people or my Mexican brothers or my Asian brothers and sisters be subjected to the over 500 years of mistreatment the way we have, I would say something because I'm a good Christian. This is not right. Why y'all doing these white people like this? Why you doing our Asian brothers like this? So that's the position that I come from. And I feel that we got to put the pressure on them to do that. If not, then we got to go from there with that whole situation. And then also you see in some of these multicultural churches that are led by Caucasian pastors, they pastor African Americans, or not just African American, brown, our Latino brothers and sisters. It is an atrocity that if you pastor what they call the minority and you not speak out against the atrocities that they face outside of your church, I think that is egregious, and I think that is not what God would want us to do. He would want us to cry aloud and spare not.
Well, Real, I said this before, and I'll say it again. I have deemed this to be craftiness, and I know I may receive some pushback on this, but I need to say it once again. I have seen time and time and time again. I'm talking about at least on 30 instances, because one of the things, if I brought my wife out here tonight, she'd say, man, close the laptop for Christ's sakes. What are you looking for? Do you have to have so much research? And I remember about a month ago, I just started watching live streams on demand of many of my Caucasian pastors. And all of them were saying how unfortunate this event that transpired to every time I think about it, George Floyd, how unfortunate it is. And I heard that word unfortunate at least 24 times. And I just begin to get a little angry, Warrell. Can I be honest? I said, because how is it that you will just say how unfortunate it is, but you will not lift your voice to cry out against it and call it wrong? And so many people say, well, Dante Long, what do you want? I want you to say wrong is wrong. I don't want you to tell me how bad the wrong situation is. I can see for myself how bad, how unequal, how disproportionate, and how I've never seen that happen to a white man. I've never seen that happen in a suburban community to one whose skin was not black or brown, right? How unfortunate. No, I want it, and I fail to hear that even now. I've not seen and I've not heard statements put out by mainline evangelical. I've not seen videos that have condemned the actions of the officers. And not only them, but condemned the office of the coroner, who said that his death was not a homicide. When we see that there are clergy that will not speak against it, when we see clergy that will not call it out, that will not cry out, will not lift their voice against, I become somewhat turned off. and I've not seen that.
Yeah.
Warrell, how are we going to leverage our position when it is that many of those pastors do pastor a lot of our people?
If any of them have any moral conscience, they should speak up for our cause. If they do not speak up for our cause, then we need to figure out a way as a people to deal with that economically, from a church perspective. Like, do we not support them anymore? Because people fail to forget we're in the deep South. Okay, this is where the Ku Klux Klan was originated from. And I oftentimes tell people that the Ku Klux Klan did not disappear; they just changed their mask. It's very plausible for a Klansman to be a modern day pastor. All right. So what you're seeing right now, to give evidence to what you're saying, and see, I'm a pastor that doesn't mind taking flack, getting to talk is fine, you know. But
Wait a minute, what
what
real?
you
Whoa, stop. Did I just hear you say that it is very plausible to believe? Say that again.
it is very plausible. I was alluding and talking about Klansmen, Ku Klux Klansmen, and I was saying that when they didn't disappear. Some of them made it into law enforcement. Some of them made it into government. Some of them made it as politicians. Some of them are pastors. Some of them are pastors. And so what you are starting to see right now is a lot of pastors that are Caucasian and that are passive aggressive racists. Now, when I say a passive aggressive racist, what I'm talking about is a person that says, I'm not racist, I got black friends. I'm not racist, I pastor black people. That's a passive aggressive racist that tries to legitimize them not being racist on the basis of the fact that I'm around black people. That's passive aggressive racist. What we are seeing is a lot of people that are racist or that have that racist mindset, right, come out of the woodworks. Because I'm sorry, I said I wasn't gonna say that, but when I heard Rod Parsley say what he said, okay, and I said, okay, I heard what you said, and then I heard the apology, and the apology was saying, well, I didn't mean it that way. Well, how did you mean it? You understand what I'm saying? I heard another white evangelical mainline pastor say that slavery was a blessing, something like that. I'm
The
like,
white blessing.
white blessing. I said, I hope people are listening. I hope people are listening. So, yeah, man, that's one of those tough things. I'm a pastor. I'm very big on social injustices and speaking out against it. And I deal with it, Doc. I hold no punches with it. I have zero tolerance for it. I'm not supporting anybody that sees these atrocities and these injustices and they don't speak up for it on behalf of our people. But yet you want our people to come to your church. Your church. You want our people to come buy your products. And so, no, we're not having it. Not doing it.
Warrell, time is getting away from us, but before we go, I got to ask you this question because I've received several phone calls from quite candidly white pastors that have said, all we got to do is preach the gospel. If we just preach the gospel of Jesus and love, everything will be all right. We don't have to go off on this tangent about racial inequalities and racial injustice. All we got to do is preach Jesus. What do you say to that?
That's the same perspective of slave masters in the antebellum slavery period in time. Oh, just man, listen. I watched Django, believe it or not, for my first time 2 days ago.
Okay.
Let me say it again. I watched Django for the first time 2 days ago with my wife. Oh my God. That shows you the perspective and the mentality of those that were in that time. For, oh, just it's gonna get better. No, it's not gonna get better if you don't do nothing about it. We even know it says faith without works is dead. And so what I say to that is that's foolishness. And that's a that is a pacify me gospel that people preach to you, and that is not of God. Um, God is not of that. That is not of God. This is not of God to see something like this and not to speak out against it. As a prophet, you have a responsibility to cry loud against injustices. You remember with Jeremiah? Jeremiah was deemed the weeping prophet. He had to go in front of Judah and let them know every time they did something, God was going to destroy them. We seen Jonah. He went to Nineveh. He had to cry out against Nineveh for their wickedness. He didn't want to go at first, but he eventually went, right? We see with the prophets, major and minor, a consistent pattern of them having to do and cry out against something that was being done to people or that people were doing unto God, and they had the uncomfortable responsibility of telling them, if you don't do this, if you don't repent, God gonna kill all of y'all. God gonna do this. What is the difference with this situation? All we're asking is for you to speak out against these injustices, speak out against what you see is happening in our communities, and come together with us in the fight and say, what can we do?
Yeah.
But you know why they won't do that? If they got, okay, I ain't gonna say that. That Holy Spirit said don't say that. But it will mess up their base of people that's in their church that are really racist. And so the Lord wants us to know as we go. I know we got to go, but this is the time that there's a separation taking place, and we're being able to now to see those that are really the true sons and daughters of God, because sons and daughters of God don't see color and that race stuff. They see, if I see that person being mistreated, I speak up against it, whether they black, white, red, orange. It just so happens that it's not no red, orange, white people that we see it happening to as commonly is black. And I'm gonna say this with you. I have a white pastor friend of mine that's in the city of Jonesboro. I'm not gonna say ain't very big church, very nice church, pastors multicultural congregation. He said to me in regards to people that say all lives matter, when we say Black Lives Matter, he said that is the same thing as going to the doctor and the doctor examining a bone in your body, and say for instance it's your ankle bone, and that's like the giving you your diagnosis saying all bones matter, but all bones are not the bones that are being affected. It's that one particular bone. We focus on that bone. I said, now this is crazy. This is coming from a white guy. You see what I'm saying? So some of them do get it. I don't want my white brothers and sisters that are watching that are not racist, that are not white supremacists in thought and in theory, to think that I do see some of you all that's out there, and I appreciate you on behalf of the black community, on behalf of black clergymen all everywhere. We thank you. But we want you also to put the pressure on your other brothers and sisters and tell them to join in with the fight, because it's only right. It's right. So, yeah.
You're right. And I don't want anybody to think that we're categorizing all. So please don't label us as extremists. We're saying, but there is a great deal of individuals that are not lifting their voice to cry against the injustice. But on the other hand, there are many that are. And so we appreciate. And we're still looking, though. This is still an open challenge. If you have not condemned the wrongdoings of policemen that have abused their position of power, and here's another thing I heard most of them say: we love all police. The police are here to serve and protect it. And I get it. I get it. We love our policemen and women, and if there were no policemen, our society would be lawless, and then mass pandemonium would be in place, and none of us want that. So we're not saying we are better off without police, but we are better off when police understand their role in public service. And that's only going to come through greater education and reform, with more training put in place, and with more on the job training, right? And so that's where we're standing with that, and legislation that will enforce penalties on those that abuse their power.
Let me say,
and I understand all of that. I understand it.
I want to say something to that, because that's the thing. See, racism is a system. I gotta go, but when you talk about a system, that means it's not just a person, it is systematic, institutionalized racism. Meaning, when you alluded to the fact of officers that basically can kill black people with immunity, it takes you back to slavery days where they had the hound dogs and they'll go out and they'll get the slave that tried to break free and they wouldn't go to jail if they killed that slave. How does that happen? You got to ask that question. It is a system that is in place that is ridiculous for us to even ask to reform this crap because it shouldn't have been in there in the first place. But we are here asking for basic civil rights. Do you understand that when we have been mistreated worse than even dogs, white people, not all, but some white people treat dogs better than they treat black folk. And the problem with that is that people don't see nothing wrong with it. That when George Zimmerman got off, killing Trayvon Martin, when we seen that officer get off, we're killing Michael Brown and Ferguson. I mean, we have countless examples. And so we're tired of it. I'm tired of seeing people get off, get slapped on the wrist, just for being able to kill us and going to Burger King after they shoot us up. Remember the young man went inside of the church in Charleston, South Carolina, killed 9 people, took him to Burger King, I think. That's called white privilege. And until we call out white privilege, we got a lot that we got to talk about. So
you said something that struck a nerve with me. You said there are some that treat dogs better than black people. Oh, that is such an outlandish statement. Worrell, I mean, he's such a race baiter. No, I'm going to tell you why you're right, Worrell. You can see a lost dog in a neighborhood, right? And people will go up to the dog, look for the tag to identify the owner, or call animal shelter to come out and safely remove the dog and demand that the dog not be euthanized but return to its rightful owner, right? They'll even go through great lengths to post signs. Found the dog. This is the dog. And maybe go as far as to get the camera and take a picture of the dog and post those signs and maybe even put it on social media. Going through great lengths. See a black man in a community that doesn't belong here, calling law enforcement immediately. He doesn't belong here. Looking for police to remove him if he's doing nothing more than maybe jogging. We saw a video the other day, riding a bicycle. Worrell, this isn't right.
Let me say this too before we go. Think about it. I'm a big football fan. We remember when Michael Vick had the fighting of the dogs.
Absolutely.
And we remember, if you're from Atlanta, you know you love Michael Vick. I love me some Michael Vick. I was heartbroken at the fact that took place, and he just squandered so much. And they came out. I forget the dog people that were, it's a name for them. But at any rate, they came out and protested. This is how you know racism exists. In 2008, Big Ben Roethlisberger. We've heard of multiple accusations of rape. This man still suited up the same season to play football. Michael Vick got literally excommunicated from the entire league for fighting dogs. So 2 things are being proven there. Obviously, some people believe that dogs' lives matter more than black people's lives matter. And secondly, racism even still exists, even in NFL football. You mean to tell me now fighting dogs is not right? But you mean to tell me fighting dogs takes a backseat to Ben Roethlisberger doing that? He still went out and he's glorified, right? That shows you there's a problem in America and nobody want to talk about it. But Pastor George Worrell and Pastor Dante Long gonna talk about it. All right, Doc, I'm done, man. I gotta get out of here. That's it.
So the takeaway from this conversation is we all have to lift our voices against the racial injustices. Is that clear?
Cry loud, spare not. Absolutely.
Cry loud. But wait a minute, why gotta be loud about it, Warrell?
Well, I believe you got to be loud about it. I don't know. That's what the scriptures say, man.
And that's the problem we have with black people. You're too loud.
Well, we need to be loud about the right things, though. That's what I do feel. You know, if we loud about the right things, like tomorrow, man, I'm going to my son's summer camp, talking to some young men. They've been up there cursing, up there misbehaving. It starts there. You know, change starts at the small level. So we got to do what we got to do. But listen, man, I want to thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. This is a great platform. It gives people the opportunity to have these uncomfortable conversations that need to be had. And whether we get irritated, agitated by it or not, we are the kingdom of God, meaning that black, white, red, orange, tall, short, woman, male, we are the kingdom of God. And we got to talk through these issues, and we'll get better. We're going to get there. But we're not going to preach over it. We're not going to ignore it. And we're not going to give people false hope. We're going to be real about this thing so we can get some real results. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Warrell, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us tonight, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
All right, take care now.
You too, brother.
All right. Friends, thank you so much for taking this time tonight to engage us in this, as he said moments ago, uncomfortable and maybe challenging, and perhaps for even some, maybe even offensive dialogue. But here at Long Talk, we do believe that we must cry loud. We must use the influence. And that's why I'm thankful that hundreds and thousands of you watch us on Facebook and YouTube. And many of you go back and look at it on Instagram and Twitter and other platforms. I realize there's some young people that have put inserts even on TikTok. I don't know how they do that, but thanks to all of the young people that have been doing that. But it is necessary that we cry loud, and as you heard earlier, we leverage our position. And I think the reason why God has given us this platform on social media is to lift our voice and to speak truth to power. There are a lot of people that watch and they don't agree. As a matter of fact, they may be antithetical to what we're talking about. And listen, that's quite all right. You may not agree with everything that you hear on Long Talk. Most times, truth challenges you from your position and really turns the dial. And some people may never get to that desired place where we believe they should be. But I believe that this platform of Long Talk at least turns the dial and brings awareness and consciousness to what's going on. All right? Well, again, I need as many of you as possible before we leave. Please, if you've enjoyed tonight's conversation, I need you to go ahead and share this, because there are so many that did not get the opportunity to listen in on tonight's conversation. And with you sharing this tonight, you will afford them to listen to it in the days and weeks and months to come. Tonight, those of you that are looking to have this uncomfortable conversation, feel free to use this conversation from tonight to be a conversation teaser, because I believe that when we are able to speak the truth to power, it infuses the necessary change that we need in the days to come. All right? Well, listen, I need you to join me this Thursday night. Got more exciting information to share with you. Got some great resources that we're going to present to you. So I need you to tune in this Thursday night. Until then, God bless you, and thank you for joining us here on Long Talk.
Follow us on Facebook at Dante A. Long. Follow us on Instagram at Dante Long. Follow us on YouTube at Dante A. Long. Thank you for tuning in to Long Talk.